So how do you teach Surya Namaskar B well and effectively, and what the heck is it anyway? In this video, we are going to take a look at Surya Namaskar B. We're going to look at the purpose, why it's different than Surya Namaskar A, and how you can practice and teach it effectively. So let's just take a step back and ask ourselves, what is Surya Namaskar B anyway, and why do we care? Okay, so Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B are both, we've inherited them from the Ashtanga yoga tradition, which in its set series starts off with 5 Surya Namaskar A all in a row and 3 to 5 Surya Namaskar B right after. So that's where all of our flow and power and vinyasa traditions have gotten this particular set of postures. So Surya Namaskar A, you can check out my video on that if you haven't yet and you want to take a look at that one, is the simpler of the two. Surya Namaskar B increases the complexity of the movements, which is why it comes second, because it's a little harder. So what is the purpose of Surya Namaskar B? Well, it incorporates a few different postures. Namely, it incorporates more vinyasa, which is that flow from plank to chaturanga to a back bend to downward facing dog. So it incorporates 2 more of those in the sequence, which makes it harder. And also it adds in a chair pose, Utkatasana, as well as Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. So from that point of view, we can say, well, hey, it's doing chair and warrior, so I'm warming up the legs and the quads a little bit more. I'm starting to open up the hip flexors when I do Warrior 1. And also, I'd say even more important than those variations is the fact that it requires you to extend your breath. So from the Ashtanga tradition, they were mostly interested in breath-motivated movement. And in Surya Namaskar B, because there are these kind of longer transitions, it forces you to extend the exhale. And by doing that with your Ujjayi pranayama, that kind of, they'll hate me for saying this, folks, but the Darth Vader breathing, but through your nose. With the breath linked to the movement, it asks you to extend the exhale and lengthen your breath, which kind of sets you up for this breath-centered practice. So those are some of both the benefits of Surya Namaskar B as well as its challenges, because as it turns out, that's kind of hard to do, and it's also very tricky to teach. So first, let's just look at practicing this, because if Surya Namaskar B is a little new to you or a little less familiar, just getting the movements down can be a challenge. So I'd like us to practice it together. I'm going to demonstrate it and talk us through at the same time. And I'm going to break down our first version of it a little bit, so it's a little bit slower, so that we can work on kind of how to get into those different poses and their alignment. Okay, folks? To the front of your mat, I'm going to have us do this the old traditional way, which means we're going to do Tadasana with our feet together. So toes together, heels just a slight bit apart at the front of your mat. Hug your thighs in and stretch your fingers down. This is just for us to practice it together and really iron out what's going on. So first, just take a slow breath in. Exhale it all out. Bend your knees, sit down. On your inhale, reach your arms forward and up, chair pose. Palms can be apart or together. As you exhale, forward fold over your legs. Let your head drop. As you inhale, prepare pose. This is a halfway lift. Get your chest open and broaden your heart. Plant your hands down. Exhale, cycle down through chaturanga or all the way to the floor. Move into baby cobra or eventually upward facing dog. And exhale back to downward facing dog. So far, so good. This is all like Surya Namaskar A. Here's where it changes. Draw your right knee into your belly and step your right foot by your right thumb. Step your left foot wide, turn your left toes slightly forward, like 45, 60 degrees. This is setting up for Warrior 1. Pull your right hip back and in. We're squaring our hips. And on your inhale, reach your arms up. Again, I'm not worried about hands apart or hands together. Classically, it's hands together, but these are variations that are, you can kind of choose what you want to do. And then on your exhale, take your hands all the way down to the mat. Step back, lower down, chaturanga, all one exhale. Inhale into up dog. This is a little tight, so keep inhaling. Yes, a little bit more. And then exhale back to downward dog. Then we're going to do Virabhadrasana 1 on the other side. So draw your left knee into your belly. Now, guys, notice the temptation here. To swing your leg up. No swinging the leg up. There's no time for that in Surya Namaskar B. You got to just step it forward. So step it all the way up, grab it, help it up if you need to. Step your right foot a little wide. Turn your right toes forward to the front right corner of your mat. Squeeze your inner thighs. Press down, rise up, Virabhadrasana 1. And on your exhale, we're going to do one of those big cycle throughs. Hands down, step back, lower down, chaturanga. Inhale into your back bend. Inhale, inhale. Exhale, lift up and back, downward facing dog. And here we are, 5 breaths. So just like Surya Namaskar A, we're going to hold downward facing dog for 5 breaths. Stretch up through your hips. On the end of your last exhale, look forward, bend your knees, walk, step, or jump your feet to the front of your mat. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold, Uttanasana, drop your head, bend your knees, sit down, chair, reach your arms forward. So instead of Urdhva Hastasana, we do Utkatasana, chair pose here, and then hands by your side. So let's just break that down for a moment. So you notice the first thing that I do, gotta catch my breath. First thing that I do in Surya Namaskar B is sit into chair. So in Surya Namaskar A, we reach our arms up. In Surya Namaskar B, you reach your arms up as well, but you sit in chair pose. So we do this here, both at the beginning and the end of the series. And then we have our vinyasa and cycle through. And then the other difference is that warrior 1. So let's do this one more time together. But this time, I'm going to use the actual breath calls. So with Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B, one of the important points of this is actually moving with your breath. So to the best of your ability, stay with my breath call so you can see how that feels. Because in my opinion, that's where, after you get past kind of the poses, the breath and smoothing out your breath is really where both the challenge and kind of the depth of this series of poses comes. So for now, we're just going to try it 1 breath per movement. And if you need to help your foot forward in that warrior 1, just grab your ankle and haul it on up. Okay. So toes together at the front of your mat. Hug your legs in, stretch your fingers to Tadasana. Take a slow breath in. And exhale out. Bend your knees. Inhale, chair pose, Utkatasana. Exhale, forward fold. No rushing, nice and slow. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, chaturanga. So you could step back, lower down, or some of you might jump to chaturanga. Inhale into your back bend, baby cobra, or I'm showing up dog, which is eventually where we go. Exhale, back down dog. Still exhaling, step your right foot forward, left foot flat. Now inhale, rise up, warrior 1. Exhale is going to take your hands all the way down, step back, lower down, chaturanga. Inhale, back bend, open your heart. Exhale, down dog, still exhaling, step your left foot forward, right foot wide. Inhale, rise up, squeeze your inner thighs. Exhale, hands down, step back, lower down, chaturanga. Inhale, back bend. Exhale, down dog. 5 slow, even breaths here. This is a good place to bring your breathing back to normal. If it got a little hasty. One more breath. Exhale all the way out, look forward, end of your exhale, walk, step, or jump your feet to your hands. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale and fold. Now bend your knees, sit down, chair pose, reach your arms up. Stand Tadasana. So there we go. That is the practice of Surya Namaskar B, right? It's a heater. So now that we've looked at the logistics of actually doing that sequence, let's talk about how we teach it. So if you'll recall from the Surya Namaskar A video, when we're teaching any of these flows, breath and movement together, really important here to keep it simple, right? In a general class, like if we're not really modifying or breaking it down, keep it simple. Inhale, always cue the breath first because the breath in these particular series is kind of the main point, right? So you cue the breath first, then direct the body. Maybe you say the pose name, and then breath and direct the body into the next pose. As we can, we'll sneak in those little specific, I call them stabilizing cues, that help to kind of align the body in the practice of teaching it. But they're really quick fixes. Engage your core, push through your hands, like really simple cues that just help people connect to the things that might be at risk. And so in this particular series, you'll notice that I'm kind of prioritizing cueing the breath over cueing a lot of detailed alignment. And in a hatha style, that would be opposite, right? But for this, because we're flowing and it's challenging, so I would only teach this in a class where I was either challenging my students in an all levels class, or they were a little bit more advanced so that they already kind of had the feeling of the postures in their body. I would definitely not teach Surya Namaskar B in a beginner class or even an advanced beginner class, just because it's going to be too tricky and it's frustrating, right? So some other tips for teaching this. So you cue the breath first, then in really simple direct language, you cue the position of the body or the pose, and then add in stabilizing cues as you have time. Now, there's a couple, those little step forwards to Warrior One are the places that can get a little tricky. So I just want to look at that in a little bit more detail. So if you'll recall in the sequence, we inhale up, exhale forward, inhale chaturanga, inhale back bend, exhale down dog, step the foot forward for Warrior One. Now you have a couple ways you can cue that transition into Warrior One, but what's key for the purposes of the breath is that you don't take extra breaths in there. So you've exhaled back to downward facing dog, and then you're stepping the foot forward and inhaling into Warrior One, and all that is supposed to happen just in that particular breath. So there's a couple ways logistically to work on that, or little tips. When you're in downward facing dog, there's a couple ways you can step up into Warrior One. If you watch my feet, I could either cue the students to step forward, then turn the back heel flat, then rise up. So I stepped the foot forward, then I turned the back heel down. Or, version number 2, from downward facing dog, you could say, turn your left foot down, step your right foot forward, inhale, rise up, Virabhadrasana 1. So I can either step forward, then turn the back foot down, or turn the back foot down and then step forward. For a general class, I think it's a little bit more advisable to step the foot forward than step the back foot down, because the higher I can get, if you watch my feet, the higher I can get my heels, the more space I have between my body and the floor, so the more clearance I have to step my foot forward. If my back foot is down, notice how that drops my back thigh. It's a little harder to step the foot forward. So for all you kicking ass and taking names Surya Namaskar Bers who are ready for something more challenging, well, you could turn your back foot down and then step your front foot forward, and that'll make that transition a little bit more interesting for you. But for the vast majority of people, it's going to be a little easier for them to get that right foot up if they can lift their back heel up. Also, what that allows you to do, because Warrior One, I got to be honest, when we're doing, I'm going to level with you, when we're doing Warrior One in this flow, I'm not really looking at the alignment so much. So if I were teaching this in a kind of an alignment focused way, I would be super conscientious about the angle of the back foot, the angle of the back knee, and what's going on in the hips, because the back thigh is actually turned out, but the hips are squaring forward. And that's a little bit of a brain melt sometimes when we're teaching it in class. But when we're doing Warrior One in the context of Surya Namaskar B, it's really about, again, these big body movements. I'm not going to be workshopping the details of the alignment here. It's kind of like, honestly, it's kind of like I'm doing crescent pose, but I want a little bit more stability because I'm moving fast, so I put the back heel down. So I'm not really worrying about alignment here so much. So if you step the foot forward first, what that does give you is for any students who might have knee stuff going on or be cautious about kind of this orientation of their leg, they could just stay in crescent pose, right? And just keep their hips squared forward. Then the knee is just totally aligned and there's no kind of weirdness going on in the back leg. However, crescent pose, because my heel is up, is a lot more wobbly, right? So if I'm thinking about modifications of Surya Namaskar B, yeah, we could modify Warrior One to be crescent pose for sure, but it's a little bit less stable. So those are the pros and the cons. So again, honestly, I let people keep their hips open a little bit, or maybe have a shorter stance for Virabhadrasana 1 here, because I'm really just focused on them taking these big body movements. All of that is to say, stepping the foot forward, then turning the back heel down, or potentially leaving the back heel lifted if they want to do crescent instead, is probably the easiest way to make their way through this transition. Here's another tip for this transition. I'm going to talk you through this in 2 different ways, and maybe you want to do this with me to feel it. So we've just come from our upward facing dog. I'm exhaling back to downward facing dog. I cue here, still exhaling, so still with that same exhale, step the foot forward, turn the back heel flat. Then I cue, inhale, rise up. So do you notice there how I made that exhale super long? Let me just contrast that to this breath version of it, where you inhale into upward facing dog, exhale, downward facing dog, inhale, step forward, turn your back heel flat, and then continue to inhale to come up. That's a really long inhale. I think you get more mileage out of the transition if you actually exhale, step the foot forward, and then inhale to rise up. And the reason I like that is, 1, it's good to extend the exhales, and we often have more control over extending the exhales than trying to like gasp in an inhale. That's super long. Also, if you look at the shape of my body, as I come back to downward facing dog, when I step the foot forward, this is all kind of contracting and drawing in. The contracting and drawing in, the compression, the forward folding, those are good shapes for the exhale. Inhales love expansion and opening. So by having students exhale as they step forward, continue that exhale, we're actually kind of increasing that compression and drawing in before we expand and open up. You can think of both of the Surya Namaskars as just a symphony of inhaling expansions and exhale contractions. Those are the big movements that we're creating. So I like stepping forward on the exhale because that's still a contraction movement. So let's just do it together. I'm going to cue you specifically through that one transition, and I just want us to be mindful of that stepping forward to Virabhadrasana 1, so you can feel how you extend your exhale to step the foot forward, then inhale to rise up. And just see how that works in your body. All right, let's give it a try. We'll do the whole thing. So step to the front of your mat, feet together. Tadasana, hug your legs in. Take a slow breath in. Exhale completely out. Bend your knees, sit down chair pose. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Halfway lift, inhale. Exhale, chaturanga, engage your core, broaden your chest. Inhale into your back bend. Press into your hands. Back to down dog. Still exhaling. Step your right foot forward, left foot wide. Inhale, rise up. Virabhadrasana 1. Exhale, hands down. Step back. Lower down. Chaturanga. Engage your core as you inhale. Upward facing dog. Press into your hands. Downward facing dog. Still exhaling. Step your left foot forward, right foot wide. Inhale, rise up. Stretch. Exhale, hands down, keep your chest wide, chaturanga. Inhale, back bend, draw your shoulders back. Exhale, lift up and back, downward facing dog. 5 breaths here. And in downward facing dog, again, I'd cue some alignment stuff like root into the inner edges of your hands as you hug your outer arms in, soften your knees to pull the upper thigh bones back as you sink your heels to the floor. 1 more breath in. Completely exhale out, look forward, walk, step, or jump your feet to your hands. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold in. Bend your knees, sit down, chair pose. And exhale, Tadasana. So how did that go for you? How did you like that Virabhadrasana 1 transition? Something to play with. And keeping that exhale super long, like exhaling back to down dog, exhaling, stepping forward, will help you to start lengthening your breath, which is one of the great gifts of this particular practice. One little tip that I didn't mention is that when people are coming up at the very end of the sequence, we halfway lift, exhale, forward fold, I will cue bend your knees first, because people might tend to come up like Surya Namaskar A. So you might have noticed I said, bend your knees, inhale, chair pose. Because as soon as I have them bend their knees, they're like, oh, it's chair pose. I'm not going all the way up, right? So that's one way that you can make that transition super obvious and keep people from defaulting to the Surya Namaskar A. So there you are, guys. We looked at Surya Namaskar B, a really challenging flow. Of course, when you're teaching this, teach the first one slow, right? Break it down. Do baby cobra instead. If you're doing Surya Namaskar B, you've probably already done Surya Namaskar A a few times, right? But if you're adding it in, again, break it down. Take that first step forward into Warrior One a little bit more slowly so people can get used to that transition, and then take people through on the breath calls. So if you have enjoyed this, please subscribe for more tips. And I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any tips on Warrior One in the flow or on Surya Namaskar B, please put them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And I'll see you on the mat.